Hi guys, I just want to start by saying thank you so much for 1,500 subs. It's amazing that I have that much despite my content being average. Thank you so much. Anyways, the Bleach series, much like any other, started quite simple in terms of strength. We had characters only destroying buildings, but that generally became more insane with people like the Espada being stated to be capable of destroying Las Noches, a country-sized area, not to mention the literal nuclear warheads Ulquiorra can infinitely spam, and the Gran Racero that is capable of warping space. And so it's obvious that every once in a while, these debates arise as to who is stronger than whom and who is the strongest. So today I'm gonna be going through the definitive top 6 strongest characters in Bleach. The reason I say definitive is because this list has gone through trial by fire. It has been confirmed and verified through various statements and feats in the manga and light novels. This is it. This is the ultimate list of the top 6 strongest characters in the entirety of Bleach, light novels included too, but you know the drill. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. I've never had more than 100 likes in 24 hours, so today I'm gonna be ambitious and say let's get to maybe 150 in 24 hours. It's not a must, but it would be nice. Anyways, let's begin. And at number 6 is the man, the son, the former captain commander of the Gotei 13, Yamamoto. So throughout Bleach, it was made clear countless times that Yamamoto was at the top of the food chain. His 1,000-year reign as the captain commander of the Gotei 13 was cemented with his unmatched strength and godly power. With his Zanpakuto being stated to be the most powerful Zanpakuto in Soul Society and his spiritual pressure stated to be the out of the bounds of common sense, Yamamoto is the one person you don't want to mess with. So we first get hints at Yamamoto's strength during the fake Karakura town arc where Eizen, after annihilating multiple captains, stated that if he were to fight Yamamoto head-on, he wasn't sure he would win. Once again, this is Eizen who said that, the Eizen that a few minutes ago was cutting up the captains like sushi. Furthermore, Eizen had to make an entire contingency plan just for Yamamoto. He had to create an entire living being to seal the flames of Yamamoto, and even after that, Yamamoto was still as big of a threat even without his Zanpakuto. Aizen, even with Kyoka Suigetsu, couldn't defeat Yamamoto, and so he literally had to use Yamamoto's own strength against him by releasing the flames that Wonderwise had sealed, which would have easily destroyed the surrounding areas alongside the injured captains. So Yamamoto had to save everyone by suppressing the explosions. Another thing to take away from that fight is Yamamoto's Kido prowess, as he was able to use Hado 96 Itokaso without an incantation, which destroyed his arm. So after that, we don't see much of Yamamoto's strength up until the last arc, and let me just say this, Yamamoto in the final arc was so badass. Yamamoto starts off in the final arc by withstanding multiple strikes from Chojiro's Bankai, which 2000 years ago was the Bankai that gave Yamamoto the scar on his face, although Yama does say that the Bankai being used by Jerome Guizbat was weaker than when Chojiro used it. He then absolutely demolishes the Stand Rita Jerome, after which he heads off to confront who he thought was Yuha. So immediately he arrives where Yuha is, he's attacked by 3 Stanritas who he blows away with just his flame burst. It's after a short exchange that Yamamoto goes Bankai, and we finally get to see his Bankai, Zanka no Tachi. So Yamamoto's Bankai has 4 parts, East, West, North and South. Zanka no Tachi East is when all the flames of Rijinchaka are condensed onto the blade of his sword, and whatever that sword touches does not burn, does not burst into flames, but gets erased from existence without a trace. And then Zanka no Tachi West is an armor of flames that surrounds Yamamoto, protecting him from harm. The flames of Zanka no Tachi West are 15 million degrees hot, but that is far too hot for it to be visible as flames, so Ashworth deduces that Zanka no Tachi West is merely the pressure of Yamamoto's Reiatsu. While Zanka no Tachi West was active, Yamamoto was stated to be capable of burning the entirety of Soul Society to ash. And then finally, Zanka no Tachi South is a technique where Yamamoto can revive the billions of people he's killed to fight for him. This army of the dead will pursue Yamamoto's enemy until there's nothing left of him. And finally, Zanka no Tachi North is a technique where Yamamoto swings his sword at the enemy and takes them down in one fell swoop. This last technique is believed to be unavoidable and a guaranteed instant kill. And that was the sixth most powerful character in Bleach. The reason why Yamamoto is more powerful than other captains is because he was stated to be the strongest captain in the war, even with one arm. And in the Can't Fear Your Own World light novels, Shunsui also notes that Yamamoto's Reiatsu was still far higher than that of the noble clan members, including Byakuya, who is one of the strongest captains at the end of the manga. The reason why he's not higher on this list is because he was killed by a fairly weak Yuha. You may say that it's because Yuha stole his Bankai, but that is the point. To steal a Bankai, you must be capable of handling its power. So that means that that weak Yuha was much stronger than Yamamoto even with his Bankai. Anyways, moving on to the fifth most powerful character in Bleach. At number 5 is Ichibe Hyosube. Ichibe is the leader of the Zero Squad, an elite division tasked with protecting the Soul King. Ichibe is known as the monk who calls the real name, and his main power is manipulation of the concept of names. Ichibe knows the name of everything, and is also the one who named everything in Soul Society, even the Bankai and Shikai. Everything we know of Ichibe's powers and strength come from his fight with Yuha in the Soul Palace. So, the first ability Ichibe reveals is the Senritsu Tensho, which is basically a giant palm that slaps the opponent around at incredible speeds. He used this to slap Yuha around, and this was the first time in 100+ chapters that we saw anyone do anything at all to Yuha. So I hope you're beginning to see why he's number 5 on this list. Ichibe was clashing swords with Yuha equally, and if anything, you can even say he was the superior one in that fight. You have to forgive me, I said swords, but Ichibe was using a freaking giant brush. The name of that brush, which is Ichibe Zanpakuto, is Ichimonji. And that brush doesn't cut flesh, it doesn't cut people, it cuts names. As I stated earlier, his main ability is manipulating the concept of names. When the brush of Ichimonji touches you, it cuts the name of the body part where it touched you. He used this to cut Yuha's name in half, thus reducing Yuha's strength by half. Ichibe is a skilled user of Kido, and is not lacking in physical strength either, as he almost crushed Yuha's neck. When Ichibe Zanpakuto is released, the brush end of it turns into a blade. While in its brush form, Ichimonji can only cut names, but when it's released, anything the ink of Ichimonji touches loses its name, and anything without a name has no power, as Ichibe describes it himself. On top of all that, Ichibe is pretty much immune to power stealing. Remember how the Stone Readers could steal Bankai? Yeah, that and any other form of power stealing doesn't work on this man. He explains that his power comes from all the black in the universe. And not only does Ichimonji take away one's name, Ichibe can also rename the person or thing whose name he took away. That is the ability of Shinichi Shirafure Ichimonji, which is basically his Bankai. Ichibe got his Zanpakuto long before Bankais were even a thing. Seriously, how old is this dude? Also, if you hadn't noticed, Ichibe has this monk thing going on, so he can also use these giant arms and legs to kick and crush his enemies. Another ability of his Bankai is the Futen Taitatsu Ryo, which is basically Ichibe summoning this graveyard that is made from the black of knights stolen from the future. The black soaks the enemy and turns them into nothing, and we only know that because Ichibe said it himself. We never got a chance to actually see how that technique works because the almighty happened. Anyways, that was Ichibe. He is number 5 on this list because he could have easily killed the Yuha that was stronger than Yamamoto and was pretty much bullying Yuha up until Yuha awakened the Almighty. The reason why he's not higher on this list is because the people above are just stronger and have demonstrated incredible feats than him. And moving on to the 4th strongest person in Bleach. Ah yes, we are finally there. We've at last gotten to the golden boy of Bleach. At number 4 is the one and only Ichigo Kurosaki. So ever since Ichigo took up the sword to protect his friends and family, he has always been among the strongest characters in Bleach, from defeating Kenpachi with only his Shikai to pushing Byakuya to the absolute limit on his first time using Bankai. It's fair to say that Ichigo has consistently remained the most combat-abled character in every arc of Bleach, and deservingly so since he's the main character of the series. Multiple characters like Ulquiorra, Grimmjow, and Eisen have pushed Ichigo to the limit, but he always emerged stronger than ever. And many attribute Ichigo's fast growth in strength to plot armor, but that's just stupid and lazy. Ichigo has always had power, and with that, let's go through Ichigo's powers and abilities. So up until the final arc of Bleach, Ichigo was a simple character in terms of combat. his two Bankais before the last arc, used to compress his spiritual pressure into his Shihakusho and sword, which would massively increase his speed and attack power. Ichigo only had the Getsuga Tensho and Black Getsuga Tensho, which is the Getsuga Tensho that he generated when he had his Olo mask on, but that changes in the 1000-year Blood War arc. So in the last arc of the Bleach manga, Ichigo's Fullbring Bankai gets broken, so he goes on this self-discovery journey to learn about his roots, and in that process, it's revealed that Ichigo is actually a Quincy too, and that Old Man Zangetsu was actually his Quincy powers, not his Zanpakuto as we believed. After that, Ichigo reforges his Zanpakuto into dual with Zanpakutos, which are pretty awesome by the way, and with those two blades, Ichigo unlocked a new technique. So upon the basic Getsuga Tensho, Ichigo can now shoot a crossed energy projectile, which he calls the Getsuga Jujisho. It's nothing special really, but I suppose it should be more powerful than a normal Getsuga Tensho since it's literally two Getsuga Tenshos in one. Ichigo can also harness the power of his Vastolode form, which is his Olo and Shinigami powers. When he does this, he gets one horn and the markings running down his face. He achieves this by pumping out more Quincy power, which in turn disturbs the equilibrium of his powers, and he can draw out his Holo powers. While in this form, his longer sword turns white, and he can also shoot a Grand Ray Zero, which is fused with his Getsuga Tensho to make what is basically a Super Grand Ray Zero. I remember back in the day people used to call Ichigo's Grand Ray Zero the King's Grand Ray Zero because of the fan translations, but that is no more. It's just a normal Grand Ray Zero, except that maybe it's super powerful. I believe that's it for his Shikai, so moving on to his true Bankai. Ichigo's true Bankai breaks the norm of what his previous Bankais were. Instead of a slender katana, Ichigo's true Bankai is like what Tekken 101 calls the Sword of Damocles. It's this big sword that looks like it can slice a planet into pieces. And it is indeed very powerful because as soon as Ichigo released his Bankai, Yuha immediately broke it. Like immediately. Yuha was like, nah bruh. And that in itself speaks word and just how powerful the new Tensei Zangetsu is, because Yuha had absorbed the Soul King and had attained an excess amount of power as he describes it himself, but still feared Ichigo's Bankai, and for good reasons, because a weakened Ichigo without his Zone of Salvation and most of his powers drained was able to tear Yuha into pieces with Tensei Zangetsu. Ichigo was also listed by Yuha in the 5 special war powers as one who has latent potential, meaning he can always grow stronger. And that's pretty much it on Ichigo, but I feel like I have to give a reason why I didn't mention Mugetsu. So when Yuha was talking to Ichigo after Ichigo had attained his new power, he says that Ichigo has regained the power he used to defeat Eizen, which is Mugetsu, so Ichigo in just his Shikai is already as powerful as Mugetsu. So that's why I didn't focus on it too much. Whether Ichigo can use another more powerful version of Mugetsu or another version of his Dangai form is up for speculation. Ichigo can also use the Blood Vein, a defensive technique of the Quincy. The reason why Ichigo isn't higher on this list is because the other 3 people are just more powerful and have more greater abilities than him, and you'll see why. And now to the third most powerful character in Bleach, which is none other than the god Eisen Soseki. So everyone at this point pretty much knows how powerful Eisen is. Very early in Bleach, he stopped not only Ichigo's Bankai but his theme too, with one finger. And that was when everyone knew that the guy in glasses was no nerd. So after that, he goes on to make this speech about how he's gonna go to heaven, kill God and become God. Little did we know that he literally meant that. But before all that, he did acquire a certain item called the Hogyoku that was hidden inside Rukia, and this item was the center of his plans. He goes on to create his own army with the help of the Hogyoku, and he confronts the forces of good, the Gote 13, and he easily destroyed them. He then fights Yamamoto and also manages to escape unscathed from a point-blank Hado 96 attack from Yamamoto, and so I feel like we should now tackle his strength and abilities. So as I implied earlier, Eizen was always powerful. He was probably the strongest captain after Yamamoto, while in the Gote 13, Eizen has an incredibly high Reiatsu, and to Shinigami, Reiatsu is strength. In fact, his Reiatsu is so high and dense that he can negate the abilities of other people, and that was even before he started fusing with the Hogyoku. So Aizen's main power power source was the Hogyoku. The Hogyoku is this powerful entity thing that responds to the desires and wishes of those around it. When Eizen started fusing with the Hogyoku, he began transforming into something that transcended both Hollows and Shinigami. In fact, it can be said that he was beginning to ascend to a higher dimension, as Ichigo Kurosaki during their fight against Eizen noted that when he attacked Eizen, it was like Eizen wasn't there at all. Eizen then goes on to transform even more to a point where he came back from almost losing half of his upper body to Gin's Bankai, and that's where we get hints of his newly acquired ability. So Eizen goes on to evolve some more to the point where other people can't even feel his Reiatsu, and he also began fusing with his Zanpakuto, but he ultimately gets defeated by Ichigo Kurosaki and sealed by Urahara Kisuke. After that, it's implied that he lost the Hogyoku. Speaking of his Zanpakuto, Eizen perhaps possesses the most overpowered Zanpakuto in Bleach. His Kyoka Suigetsu is a Zanpakuto whose special ability is called Kanzen Saimin, or the perfect hypnosis. This is the ability to place people under hypnosis where all their 5 senses are affected and they 100% fall prey to the illusions Eizen chooses to show them. So far in Bleach, Kyoka Suigetsu had one weakness, and I say had because it no longer has that weakness. The only way not to fall under Kanzen Saimin is by touching the blade of Eizen's sword before it's released. But that weakness is normal because Eizen, during his final battle with Ichigo, had begun to fuse with his Zanpakuto, and in the final arc of Bleach, it's revealed that Eizen has completely fused with Kyoka Suigetsu, and so he can place people under hypnosis by just looking at them. And it's also revealed that Eizen had in fact grown stronger ever since he fought Ichigo, and Yuha had even listed him in the 5-0 potential list as one with monstrous Reiatsu. Eizen, while seated on a chair and with no incantation at all, was able to conjure up a black coffin, or the Gado 90 Kurohitsugi, that was bigger and more powerful than the one he used against Ichigo, and immediately after that he was gonna bring down the Soul King's palace, which is millions if not billions of miles away. I mentioned earlier that through his fusion with the Hogyoku, Eizen had attained a new ability, which is revealed to be immortality. Eizen can't die. I swear, can this guy not get more of a power than he already is? I believe that's about it for Eizen, or I forgot to mention that he's also a skilled Kido user. The reason why Eizen is higher than Ichigo is obviously because of his Kyoka Suigetsu, which has no limits or weaknesses, and also his Kido prowess. Don't forget that he is also truly immortal. Eizen also grows stronger by just sitting on a chair, and that's why I believe he's just stronger than Ichigo. We're almost done, so moving on to number 2. And the second strongest character in all of Bleach is the king of the Quincy's, Yuha the Almighty. Yuha, aka Yahweh, or the god of the Quincy's, was the main villain of the final arc of the Bleach manga. He led his Town Reader army in an attack against the Soul Society for the second time in 1,000 years. Yuha is the literal embodiment of if you fail once, try twice. So I'm not even gonna go through this guy's history, instead I'm just gonna jump straight into his powers and abilities, otherwise we're gonna be here for a while. So to start off, a weaker Yuha than what we see later on in the arc easily shut down an enraged Bankai Ichigo, and that was after he stole Yamamoto's Bankai. To steal a Bankai, one must be able to control its power, aka one must be as strong as the owner of that Bankai. In the Stan Rita army, there wasn't any Quincy who could even handle Yamamoto's Bankai, so Yuha told them not to try stealing it until he arrived. And when he does arrive, he steals Yamamoto's Bankai quite easily. I call the Yuha that was at the beginning of the 1000-year Blood War arc weak because he was yet to regain his full power according to the Kaisa Gesang, which states that the defeated Quincy King will regain his pulse after 900 years, and his intelligence after 90 years, and his power after 9 years. And by the time Yuha leads the first invasion of Soul Society, those 9 years were yet to be complete by a few days. Anyways, Yuha can use the basic Quincy abilities like Blood Vein and Blood Artery, and he can also use his Reishi swords, which are super cool and dangerous by the way. He used one to slice Yamamoto in half and was slicing and dicing Ichigo with them. If it weren't obvious, Yuha also possesses superhuman strength and speed, much like everyone else on this list. I believe I've mentioned his basic abilities, so let's get on to his more complicated ones. So the first special ability Yuha possesses is Sanct Altar, which is an ability that Yuha uses to steal the powers and abilities of his opponents. He can also use a special version of the Blood Vein called the Blood Vein of Eben, which expands the protective barrier of the Blood Vein to the outside of the body. He also has an ability called the Sanct Bogen, which is basically just giant Quincy arrows. I also do suppose he can use the Sanct Zwinger, where he creates a domain where anything that steps inside is torn into pieces. And finally, the most overpowered ability yet, the Almighty. The Almighty is Yuha's ultimate ability that allows him to see an infinite amount of futures and choose any of those futures where things go his way, thus effectively changing the future. Through the Almighty, he can break any bunker in the future, set traps, and anticipate anything at all that the enemy can do to him. He can even change or rewrite his death, which somehow makes him immortal. And now we get to the main power. So as the father of the Quincy's, Yuha can also use the powers and ability of said Quincy's after they die, and also, he gave the Stand Readers the Shrift which he made himself. These Shrifts are special powers and abilities, and it should be obvious that he can use those Shrifts since he's the one who made them himself, except the Miracle and the Compulsory. I will now list some of the Shrifts and what they can do. A. The Antithesis. He can use this to reverse the effects between two targets, like transfer any damage dealt back to him to his opponent. B. The Balance. He can use this to turn the scales to his favor and negate other people's abilities. D. The Death Dealing. He can turn anything into poison, including his opponent's blood or the air around the opponent. E. The Explode. He can turn anything his reishi touches into bombs. X. The X-Axis. When faced with danger or death, he can transform into an intangible divine being. V. The Visionary. He can warp reality to his liking. For example, he can conjure up things from thin air, copy his opponent's strength, and even transport his opponents to different dimensions. Z. The Zombie. He can turn anyone his blood touches into mindless zombie-like beings and use them to his liking. Y. The Yourself. Yuha can copy the strength, appearance, abilities, memories, and spirit of the opponent. S. The Superstar. He can make it so that he grows stronger from having someone cheer for him. P. The Power. Through this, he can obtain unmatched physical strength. I. The Iron. With this, Yuha can make himself invulnerable. F. The Fear. He can induce paralyzing fear into his enemies. And that was just a few of so many much more. And that was it for Yuha. And finally, the most powerful character in all of Bleach is Eizen's chair. So we only saw Eizen's chair a few times in Bleach. I'm just kidding. Seriously though, Eizen's chair withstood a powerful black coffin, so it's surely gotta be up there, at least in the top 10 strongest characters in Bleach. Anyways, the most powerful character in Bleach is none other than the Prime Soul King. In the Can't Fear Your Own World light novels, the powers of the Soul King were described as being close to omnipotence and omniscient. His powers were what created the Bleach multiverse. A weakened Soul King who was absorbed by Yuha gave Yuha unmatched power, so go figure just how powerful a fully functional Soul King would be. Furthermore, pieces of his body created some of the most powerful characters in Bleach, like Gerard, who is the Soul King's heart, and Panaida, who is the Soul King's right arm. A small piece of the Soul King also created the monster kid known as Hikone Ubuginu. So it's quite obvious that no one, and I mean no one at all who we've seen in Bleach, comes close to comparing to the Prime Soul King's powers. Anyways guys, that was it. I know this will be a long video. Thank you so much if you reached to the end. It supports the channel and I hope you enjoyed it and learned something. If you want more Bleach videos like this, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. I will see you later on in another video. Until then, be safe and enjoy yourself.